Hello and welcome. My name is Cyndal Wallace, your host, and welcome to the Purpose Project, where I am interviewing entrepreneurs and people that are acting on their highest excitement, their purpose, and their passions. And today I am with Stephanie Plat, and we are going to be talking about NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, something that she's very passionate about, and she's acting on this highest excitement. So how I always like to start this off is, how would you define purpose and passion? And do they overlap for you, or are they separate?
It took me a journey to find purpose and passion and to align it. And what a great topic, because in NLP, there's one technique we use called integration. And in integration, you can look at it as having purpose and passion and integrating that into your life. And then how that aligns the stories that you have to tell going forward in your life. I like to think back to when life for me in 2014, I had to make a medical decision for myself, having a BRCA gene. I had to have a mastectomy. So what did that look like for me? What was I thinking as a mother with 3 young children? What's my purpose? So then taking that, digesting that, allowing for it to happen, knowing that I made the right decision. Here I am 10 years later. Now I have my passion.
Yeah.
And I'm aligning it with my purpose, where I know I can help people. And then luckily I found NLP. It found me, and I'm able to now deliver something that I know can help other people.
I love that. And I also love too how they overlap for you. And so if you're really lucky, sometimes they overlap.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it ebbs and flows.
Think about a tree.
Yeah.
So I like to think about this with NLP. When a tree grows, you see the different rings, and as they grow, sometimes the rings are really big, and sometimes the rings are really thick, and sometimes they're really thin, and they're not always in the right shape. So a tree can grow big and wide, but you never know what it was going through during that growth. So come wind, come rain, come snow, come a kid climbing on the tree, that growth, that stress. So you've got purpose. What's the tree's purpose? And you've got the passion that the tree wants to grow. It wants to fruit. It wants to shed some bark that no longer serves. It wants to flower. And then we come along, take it down and say, I'd like to build a house. So now it's serving the purpose.
I love that. Just for everyone out there, how would you define NLP? What is Neuro-Linguistic Programming?
NLP was founded with John Grinder and Richard Bandler. And NLP is the study of the successful behaviors in the successful thoughts that we can produce them in. We have all these behaviors and we have these thoughts. Think of a kid who's conditioned, right, over time to do and act in one certain way, but then that behavior and those thoughts, maybe the thought was bad when he did the behavior. So now he is acting like a naughty kid. So you change the thoughts and you are such a beautiful person. Look how good you are at math. All of a sudden, you're like 2 + 2 is 4 and I know it. And you behave in a way that performs on the thoughts you just were not only conditioned to be thought from somebody else, but now you're going to act on them. So if someone says, oh, you're terrible, I can't even believe you wear that outfit, you're going to be like, oh my God, what did I just do? And you're going to want to go change your clothes. Your behaviors to go change when you could have liked what you were wearing. It didn't have to be on the bias of somebody else's thoughts or conditioning and the words they used for you to understand. NLP has a lot of different ways that we can help change the conditioning of how we think and to change the behaviors and how we act. I like the analogy. You can never teach an old dog a new trick. You can.
So it's like, yes, you can.
You absolutely can. And what I like to think about is those neural pathways, the layers that we pack on top. Okay, well, I wasn't thinking good thoughts then, but now I'm going to think this thought, but I'm going to also create an action with that thought. And that's what the NLP is doing, is you're creating the action with it. So then that thought and action, because now you've created the new thoughts and the new action.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that neuroplasticity, like neuroscience, has proven. So this is all backed by science. And I always like to think too that NLP and hypnosis, they're like sisters. So like they're related.
Absolutely.
Right? So then, speaking of actions, how are you currently acting on your highest excitement, purpose, and passion?
Since 2025, I've taken new steps. I have now created a new website and I've created new connections. So I'm reaching out into the communities and I'm reaching out to nutritionists and I'm trying to help because I have had my own experience where my daughter had an anorexia journey. And so I had to figure it out. And again, it was purpose, passion, and how does that align? As a mother, I had to use NLP and I had to know I have to show up and I have to be here. I have to use different words and I have to act in different ways because it's also perception. The perception of what is an eating disorder for her versus a eating disorder for me as a mother to help her. Mm. You never take the journey away from someone who's going through something because that's their lesson. And so you have to allow that lesson to happen, but you can still be there as support. And I think she was such a great lesson for me to allow the journey, but to be there. I might have been smiling in the pictures, but really inside I was hurting. I don't know if other mothers go through this. I'm sure they do. Providers, when teenagers are 14 to 16, they don't allow you in the room with your kid. And when the kid goes into the exam room and comes out worse than they did going in, you wonder what happened. One thing that was shared with me was my provider made me feel like I wasn't sick enough, that they didn't warrant the attention to take care of me. So now I want to go home and make myself sicker so that I want to be cared for. And it's interesting because how our mind works, we want the attention to be cared for because then we feel like we're going to get better.
Yeah.
So she went backwards before she went forward. And after I noticed the cycle and I was like, okay, but how is this making me feel? Okay, how can we change this? So we got together and we teamed up against the doctor and said, I want my mom in the room. It came from her. So the doctor had to allow me in there. And so I was able to see the process and what was going on and see the words that she was using and change that.
Wow. And that's such a powerful experience to go through on many different levels. I love how you advocated for her and you also taught her how to advocate for herself as well. And then using this very powerful tool, NLP, to be able to help her navigate and move through this. And I also really love what you said too about not taking away that journey because it is their lesson to learn. Yeah. And she's going to grow and get stronger because of it. And now you guys have like a great,
amazing relationship. We still, I cannot be more grateful for how I can communicate with her morning and at night and be understood and see her grow as an adult. It's just so cool.
Yeah.
The blossom.
I also wanted to clarify too, because you're talking about how your daughter had to go back a couple of steps before to be able to move forward. So this way she was able to get the care that she needed from. And that happens on an unconscious level where people are always consciously thinking, I have to make myself more sick in order for me to do this.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There's that unconscious mind and that conscious mind working together.
Mm-hmm.
And what I decided to do for her was create tactile situations where she would have to write conscious things and unconscious things were fed into her. So I might play different kind of music. I might give her something to drink that's more relaxing. I might slip her a couple of snacks that create different feelings of freshness, like cucumbers and celery. For an anorexic, that doesn't have a lot of calories, but the flavors and the freshness and to eat, you want to get the body to have melatonin, serotonin, all these different things that they're lacking. And that was amazing to me to see how just that little bit of food and just that little bit of a drink, because tea didn't have flavors or calories. So she was okay with those things. So you find where they're okay, you meet them where they're at, right? And then you create the slow mound and over time, it took me a long time to build it, but we got there. Yeah. And then we got to go to the next thing. Then it was smoothies and then it was yogurt and then it was a soup. And then it was a meal. It was slow, but we got there. It was changing the beliefs, changing the thoughts, changing the environment, changing all the things. And eventually we got to a place where she accepted change. Isn't that the hardest thing, right? to accept change, but we're always changing.
Always.
The weather's always changing. Our hairs are always changing. Our skin's always changing. We're always growing.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't see that.
Yeah. And I really love how you were able to stair step it with her, because a lot of people feel like they have to be the all or nothing, right? They have to be 100% or 0%, that there's nowhere in between. I think it was the book Atomic Habits. Have you read that book?
I love it. Yes.
And so I
My
think
favorite.
the quote in there, like if we do 1% progress every day, by the end of the year, it's like a 38% increase.
Absolutely.
Right. And
Yep.
so we just do 1%. And just thinking about 1% is so much more obtainable than 100%.
You were saying, what am I doing to be different this year? Like to pursue my passion. And it is that 1%. So, while I'm working a full-time job, I'm doing the 1% to offer my NLP to help families to grow, to maybe have a neuro-linguistic experience to make that change.
Yeah.
Whether it's one session, whether it's 4 sessions, let's have just a free session. Let's have a conversation about what it is and how it can help you. And that's where we start.
I love that. I'll have to start somewhere, right?
And it's called Lotus Bloom. You grow from the dirty waters and where you're at, and you blossom and you bloom.
Yeah.
And it's just great.
Yeah. I just want to share real quick too. My business is Blooming Lotus Hypnosis, and then your NLP practice is
Lotus Bloom NLP.
And then, but you didn't even know me. Like, and then we got connected, and then it was like, wait a second, Blooming Lotus, Lotus Bloom.
We had to meet.
So I love how NLP and hypnosis are like sisters, and
Absolutely.
so like it's a lot of fun.
How NLP came to me actually was, so my daughter had the eating disorder. I was in my rut. I was like, forget it. I didn't find my purpose. My passion's not working. I don't know what I'm doing. I got to be mom. And when I was in that, a life coach in my network of people said, oh, well, I'm going to offer this program and it has this course of NLP that you guys can get certified in. What? It just came to me.
Yeah.
And so being that was there, I had to take it because it was either if you didn't take it, you didn't get it. And so I got my certification, and the person who had done the certification, he also does hypnosis. His father does hypnosis and NLP in England. It just goes together.
I love that.
The yin and the yang.
Yeah. Peanut butter jelly.
Sticks.
I love that because I was going to ask, like, how did you come across this? Like, how did you know that like the NLP was like this passion? Like,
So
how did you feel it? How did you know?
So it's funny. So I had to do the course, right? Here's the paper. Here's the time. You've got to show up. So I showed up just blindsided, like, just make sure she's eating. Okay. And I'm on the course. I'm on the Zoom because that's what we're doing in 2020. And I don't know, just take the notes, Stephanie, just take the notes. That's all I'm saying to myself. And I'm doing the notes. And then I get partnered with someone who individuals come to us to teach us lessons.
Absolutely.
And this individual was one of those that asked 500 questions about nothing we were talking about. And then you have to apply what you just learned, and was the end result of like it never worked. So I felt like I wasn't doing it right. Thankfully, my instructors were like, Stephanie is doing it right. I know you had a transformation in that moment because we all saw it, but he just was constantly giving the no. And so what a great lesson. It inspired me just like a little candle does a wick. No, I became the fire and I became the campfire. I was like, no, we're doing this. And so I found out what really made him tick in his visualizations. And so I was able to actually transform his thought and what he was going through and make it like a suit of armor with the shiny knife, with the jujitsu proud opportunity. I transformed him. So he gave me the good lesson. He inspired the passion. And that's when I was like, oh yeah, this isn't over. You just ignited the passion in me. So it was a great lesson. It was something I actually hadn't thought about. So thank you.
You're welcome.
That came from like heart.
Yeah. I mean, and again, like being able to kind of go through this like moment, like, oh, is this really the thing? and then you stuck with it, had discipline to follow through with it, then you had a breakthrough.
Yep. The only way out is through. That's what I told my daughter when she was going through it. I was like, you chose this path and you're going to have to continue to work through it. And I'll give you all the tools. I mean, because you can have the tools on the tools belt, but you have to know how to apply them.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that I had to be there. Here you go. Try this. Didn't work. Try that.
Yeah.
So we did emotion code, belief code. We did NLP. We did hypnosis. And then we saw the psychiatrist, and that she said was like the least help.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
And then we did the work with Joe Dispenza using the meditations and what do you really want out of this life? And she's now found her passion. She wants to be a personal trainer, a nutritionist.
Yes. And I love that too. So just the fact that she's been able to go through the dark night of the soul, go through the mud.
So young.
You know, so many teens go through this too, you know, but being able to go through the mud and being able to grow through it, and then coming to a point of wanting to become a personal trainer or nutritionist to be able to help other people so then they can become the best version of themselves.
And where those points were maybe a trigger for her, they're not a trigger. They're the opportunities to learn how to be better. And so that's what she was like, oh, I was like that, Mom, when you said it was an opportunity to learn. So I really hated it. But then it became that opportunity for her to learn. And then it became the drive. And she was like, wow, people compliment me because I look good, but I look good because I worked hard to get where I'm at. So when you've worked hard to get the muscles and regain and build your purpose back, you found your passion.
Yeah. And how do you find that NLP has helped you be like a better mother?
Perspective.
Yeah.
A lot of perspective. So you have to see them where they're at. You have to see people where they're at. You're stuck in the rut. The thoughts you think, the things. Yeah. I had to have that perspective and know I'm Mom. That's hers. You can't own other people's stuff emotionally, what they're going through. When it's hard for them for whatever reason. It is hard for them. It's the thoughts they're thinking. You never get to know the internal dialogue. You get to know the outer dialogue.
Yeah.
And so the conscious mind and the unconscious mind have a conversation, and we have to make that other perspective and choice to get a result. And so it's almost like the kid at the candy store who really wants the candy. The mom says, you can't have the candy, and he sticks it in his pocket. Well, the unconscious mind, so you shouldn't have done that. And the conscious mind was like, well, no, I'm doing this. So it's having that internal dialogue, and you hope that the unconscious mind can change the conscious mind. You could have that conversation with the kid, like, would it really be worth it to you having that candy when you can have it later? So why can't the mom, like, I always think about like the times when my kids wanted chocolate. Like, okay, you can't have the whole king size candy bar, but can we get like maybe the little one? And then we've satisfied like what your body wants. So your body maybe wanted that. So you had that little nibble. That's all.
And that's also like, for one, like teaching compromise, you know, where we don't have to have this big thing, but we can meet ourselves where we're at and compromise a little bit, but then also compromising with like our parents and compromising with other people and learning how to compromise with ourselves.
Yeah.
Which I think is very valuable, because I think that's a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
For many
Opportunity to
people.
learn.
It really,
Yeah.
it is. It is.
It is.
And how has your experiences shaped the way that you use NLP to like help other people? I know you've been talking about your daughter quite a bit.
Yeah. So the fun part is we love Zoom, and 2020 taught us a few things.
Yeah.
And so now we can use Zoom, and I love it because I can plug in the Spotify. So I bring in the music, and then I've got the Zoom. I've got this technology, and then I can apply all my tools with NLP right there in your own home. Now, what I won't do a trance or hypnosis, because I don't know what's going to happen on the other side. Even if something happens to that person, I would feel very bad. So I will walk them through maybe an integration where maybe someone doesn't feel aligned with like, where am I at? Where am I going? What's going to be next, right? Where my purpose, my passion, I don't know what it is. And so we walk through an integration where it brings together as you're talking and you're going through this integration, and your hands, they kind of go, "Oh, I don't know." Funny, like you can feel, right, that magnetism between your hands, and then it fights it. And then it's like it's bringing the unconscious and conscious mind together, and it it holds it. And I mean, it's powerful. When you see that happen, I mean, the tears burst, they're shaking, I mean, my nervous system right now is in remembering when I do this, it remembers in my sacral area, like, yeah, I remember when I did my integration. So we have a good feeling, and we anchor that good feeling. Our neural pathway is in the bliss of that feeling. And the moment that feeling starts to go away, it's my job as me delivering NLP to now release your fingers so that anchor stays. And because now you're out of that experience and that thought, what you're holding, and then you go back to anchoring it and then releasing it. And so now you leave me, you're done with your session, you're out in the world, you're at the grocery store, you can't handle the environment and what you're in. Anchor, neural pathway remembers, going to the bliss, completely forgets about the situation, and you've used your NLP tools.
Absolutely.
So it's just amazing.
Yes. I mean, I also teach like the anchoring techniques as well too. And they're so powerful to be able to help take the edge off a situation. And it's also powerful too, to know this feeling is always within you. Right. And you touched on another thing with the integration. Integration is such an important factor in all the work that we do, right?
Yes.
Doing the work and coming up with the insight takes work, but it's the integration is where the true change and transformation really happens.
That's when I knew Lotus Bloom.
Yeah.
That's when Lotus Bloom was born, and I was out of the mud in the beauty. I was like, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm going to help people. I didn't know I was going to focus on helping families with eating disorders, but I also have my BRCA gene, and I was like, I can help these people. And you know what? When you put it out to the universe, they just come to you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And do you feel passion like in your body? Like, does it come through as excitement for you, or?
Yeah, excitement like a flame just got turned on hot, and you just feel that spark of I want to share, and you just can't stop talking about, whatever it is you're talking about, that passion's ignited and you just feel it. So kind of like this conversation right here.
I know, right?
I love that.
And do you this is just, I guess, a question. Do you feel it like in your gut? Do you feel it in your heart?
More sacral for me.
Sacral?
Yeah.
Okay,
Let's pull on human design, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I do feel it more like the sacral and in the gut area. But when I know I've satisfied with the words and the alignment of what I'm wanting to communicate to someone, I feel it in my heart. And that's when I'm like, oh, I know I sent them off with a nugget that's going to be with them. So, I like to think about how we're integrated as people and how we are connected and get to know people. And so let's think about a ball of rubber bands, right? So that all the rubber bands that have all these different colors. Well, you might have a green rubber band and I have a blue rubber band, but where they overlap on that ball is how many times we might be seeing each other in this universe and sharing that experience that then takes us to the yellow rubber band or to the red rubber band. But then they have an experience and they go, oh, well, I remember Cyndal. I remember Stephanie. This is what they shared. And then it just becomes that circular time in what needed to be said, what needed to be learned, what needed to be carried out into an experience.
I love that. I use a similar analogy with puzzle pieces and collecting the pieces of the puzzle. And as you meet new people, as you get more tools, have more experiences, you're like, that is that missing puzzle piece I've been looking for.
Yep. And all of a sudden there's the picture that you've been wanting to see. And then it ignites the heart.
Yeah. Oh, such good stuff.
Yeah.
So good. So good. So for anyone who is curious about NLP, are they currently struggling with their own, blockages? What advice would you have for them?
So when you're feeling like you're stuck in the rut and you've got anxiety, fear, and doubt, one thing I like to do is I help to transform limiting beliefs. And so you can find me at thelotusbloomnlp.com.
Cool. I'll go ahead and put that down so people can find you. And I did want to also mention too, because you did mention before about how you feel this was divinely placed. Talk a little bit more about that.
So I've gone to school for fashion design because I thought maybe I wanted to be in retail. back in the 90s, right? What do I do? And I fell into that, and I was there for about 15 years, and I was like, it's not igniting the passion. Doesn't feel purpose. I like people, so I could talk to people. And then from there, I went into the medical field, which is funny how divinely that lined me up to have my purpose, because I needed to find the BRCA gene, and I don't know how else I would have ever found that. And then how life navigated me as a mother with my children to this. So it's funny how we think, oh, what do you want to grow up and be? You know what? Through it all, I've been an entrepreneur. I was the kid that sold not something on the side of the road that was practical. I colored on a piece of paper, I rolled up flowers, and I sold them to the guy going home. I made him backpacks, purses, and bikinis back in college. I've always been an entrepreneur. And that's the fine line that's always been the golden thread in my life.
I love that. And it's just like beating to your own drum, making up your own rules.
Yeah.
And guidelines, I guess, and just being able to act on that excitement, even if it's changing.
Yeah.
And like, how fun is that? Like making like little paper roses or anything.
Yeah, it was perfect.
So I know you already dropped your website, but I want to ask again. So the website was again,
it's the Lotus Bloom NLP.com.
Awesome.
I am working towards getting that up on Facebook. I'm going to create a private group, so everyone can have a safe space and community where people get to know other people who are going through the same anxieties, fears, doubts, and we can help transform beliefs together.
Awesome. Okay. Well, if that group is up and going by the time that this is posted, that will go ahead and can we link that too?
We'll link that too.
So that people can
go to Lotus Bloom and you'll find the page. And then inside there will be a group specific to what you might be going through.
Awesome. There's so much value in having like your own like little hub as well to people that can speak similar languages. We come together and we can all grow through dialogue, through NLP, if you will, right?
How we find our people. Yes.
And is there anything else that you would like to share, that you would like to add, anything that you think would be valuable?
Well, let's just remember that the language that we speak to ourselves is going to be so important on the actions we take with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I think, the most important thing about NLP.
Absolutely. And it's a practice of being able to start being more aware of the words that we speak and how we say it, and the thoughts that we think to ourselves. And we don't always have control over our first thought, but we can mindfully and attentively choose our second thought.
Yep.
And that's something that NLP helps teach us.
I always like to ask, is that thought true?
Yeah, doing a reality check.
Does it resonate with you? What makes it true? And then how do you know it's true?
Yeah.
And then if it's not true, well, what is true?
Yeah.
So,
and by finding out and discovering and uncovering what is true, then we can begin to let go of the things that are not true. Yep. That makes it easier for our brain to let go of the things that aren't true when we can actually see the truth. That's why like doing a reality check is super important, right?
So important.
Yeah.
You get to get a different vision. And you know what? Sometimes I think it's fun to even paint that vision and start over. Get a new piece of paper. Life's changed. Okay. What do I want? What do I really want? And be specific, because when you think the thoughts you want to create that next future, to manifest what it is, you also have to have the actions to back it up. So if you say you want a car, do you want a car that runs, or do you want a car? Do you want a little car? You could get a car, but you got to be specific. I want a car that when I turn on the key, it's perfect every time. It's going to be green with black wheels and gold hubs and 4-wheel drive. You got to be specific.
Absolutely.
If you're not specific in your life, you might just get what you asked for.
This reminds me of a story. One of my, he was a friend of a friend, and he lives out in Oregon, and it was my first time meeting him, and he built this cabin out in like middle of nowhere in Oregon, gorgeous. And he like built it himself. And he started building it like the beginning of the new year. And then he said, by the end of this year, I'm going to have running water. going through my house. December.
There was
Imagine my vision where that went.
there was a flood.
Okay. He had running water going through his house. Oh my gosh. And it was like, I need to be a little bit more careful about when I speak out there and intentions into the universe.
Yeah. Yeah. Our words have power, right?
So much power.
Yeah.
After all, that's why they call spelling. Spell with our words, right?
It's true. I've never thought of that. That's good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Thousands of spells with my words. And like, even like being mindful about that. I was like, oh, and being mindful again about what we're speaking, because there's also vibrations as well, too. And it's also going to deepen our belief system that we have. And is that belief system that we have, is it really in alignment with who we want to be and who we're becoming?
Yeah. How we unfold that next chapter. Yeah. So all the people that want to write a book out there, what's the feeling you have towards writing that book?
Yeah.
Anger, fear, sadness, guilt, and hurt. That's another thing. In NLP, you can also do timeline therapy. So when you're running through those emotions, anger, sadness, guilt, fear, and hurt, you have to do them in a certain sequential order. First time I ever did it, and I was helping my daughter, she didn't want to finish. Well, not that she didn't want to finish. She fell asleep. And so I was like,
Interesting.
well, I'm going to continue. Well, she didn't hear me. She must have been in a deep sleep.
Yeah.
So when she woke up, she was sad and she was crying. And I was like, oh my God, that's where I left off. We have to do this all over again. So I walked her again through the timeline therapy. Anger, sadness, guilt, fear, hurt, done. She felt amazing.
Yeah.
It was like 360. So it's interesting. You learn that the tools you have, you've got to use them in the correct way. And otherwise the techniques can have a little broken effect. And, you can go through the process of, like when the flower grows, it smells pretty, it's beautiful, it's got petals, but there's also where the petals come off and you got to grow again.
Yep.
So it's an evolution of change. So I learned and she learned.
And when we have this flower that is bloomed into a beautiful flower and then the petals start falling off, it's going to be up to the individual to have the discipline of being able to tend to the flower so then it does grow again.
Yeah.
Right. And so that we can make sure that it blooms in the way that's intended.
Yep.
Yeah.
So much value in that.
Yeah.
Lotus bloom.
Lotus. I love it. It's so fun.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you again being here, talking about
Yes.
NLP, like mindset, also sharing a very vulnerable moments of your life, like with your daughter and everything like that. So I really appreciate just you being here.
And, I thank my daughter for letting me share her story because I did give permission for that because that's a journey of hers that I was a part of. But she said, no, you need to share that, Mom. Yeah, it's important.
I want to ask for anyone who is either like a mom or a parent who has a kid that is experiencing an eating disorder or disordered eating, do you have any suggestions for them in regards to that?
Definitely start with your primary care doctor and get an assessment. If you have even the intuition that something's going on, that's where we started. And through that process, once we knew the status over time where things were, we then seek the help of a psychologist, a therapist, a nutritionist. We even went to an eating recovery center because it took her 4 months at the eating recovery center in Seattle to go on her own journey where I was able to visit, but that was the state of where she was. And she grew from there and it was powerful. So
where your daughter takes her passions and all the people that she's going to be able to help and inspire with her own hero's journey.
Yeah. It's just the start of her ripple effect.
I know.
So excited.
And what amazing cheerleader she has.
Yes.
Love that. Love that. Well, thank you all for joining us here today. And I would like you to share, have you ever heard of NLP? Is this something that has caught your attention? And if not, then you can also share, how are you acting on your purpose, your passion, or your highest excitement at this point in time in life? My name is Cyndal, again, your host. Please go ahead and smash all the buttons, like hit a like, subscribe, leave a comment, share with a friend if this is going to be helpful for them. Thank you so much. Take care, breathe deeply. Until next time.